Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Today I'm speaking with Jake Mackey. Jake is a professor at Occidental College. He also edits the Journal for Free Black Thought, and he's working on their compendium. And recently he's been invited to a writers group at Heterodox Academy to help academics write more accessible, articles and papers so the general public could read them. And he's also now a member of the Academic Freedom Alliance, which I, I think that's one of the things we'd like to talk about is what's going on in the academy. Can it be saved? Am I being too pessimistic? And we'll go through that. Hey, Jake, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Um, yeah, I think I'm just going to dive right into the academy. So
Yeah, sure.
here's my take on it, and obviously, I'm an outsider. I got my bachelor's in '95 in political science. I did some master's work, but I never, proceeded beyond that. Then I got into IT and I just stuck with IT and that was it. So I started studying it and looking at it in 2014. So people who listen to this know that, it was just, I was criticizing Islam and I got called a white supremacist. And I'm like, where the hell is this coming from? And it just, it just made no sense to me. And so that's when I started looking into it and I started seeing what was going on in the academy. And what I saw as a blasé attitude towards it, it was, the more I looked into it, the more I saw it. It was like, okay, when the first political correctness came around, it's like, oh, well, it's died down. It's no big deal. See, it went away. It was just a fad. But it went underground. It stayed in the academy. It grew and it got into a lot more fields, and now it's affecting STEM.
Mhm.
So I see that I saw the same kind of thing happening. So there was I think her name was Melissa Click. She was a professor of media and journalism at Mizzou.
Mhm.
So she got famous because there was a protest at Mizzou. A student reporter from the school came to cover the protest. She got upset, and then she's on video calling for Muscle to have the student removed.
Hmm.
Now, in my mind, that should have rung alarm bells. Like, okay, what's going on in the School of Journalism or the School of Media at Mizzou? Like, how is a professor who's teaching there in this field trying to trample the rights of a student reporter? She got
Mhm.
fired, and everyone's like, "Oh, see, it's all fixed." And I just kept seeing things like that over and over again. And um, you know, fast forward to 2020 when the vaccine came out and the CDC put out that recommendation. It was like it hadn't gone through, but it should go, it should vaccinate by race. And one of their justifications was that yeah, the elderly are mostly white and they've already lived long, privileged lives, so it doesn't matter. It should be done by race. And then there was a lot of backlash. They withdrew that thing right away, and everyone was like, "Oh, see, it's fixed." And 2 years later, 3 years later, you got med schools requiring, diversity oaths before the Hippocratic oath.
Mhm.
And so I'm looking at this, and then I'm sorry, I'm just going to ramble a little bit longer. And then I also like one of my big things since I came back was there's going to be overcorrections. You're going to have the pendulum's going to swing too
Mhm.
far the other way. It's not going to stay in the middle.
Mhm.
And the academy, and then that feeds into everything else, because I mean the people who graduate are the ones who are going to go and work for the ACLU and go and work in government and go come back into the academy. Like, so if that well is sour, you know you're you're not going to have a proper defense. And that's
Mhm.
what I'm seeing right now. Like the ACLU is worthless. That Canada is so much further gone than the United States when
Mhm.
it comes to this stuff. Um,
Mhm.
we have social justice tribunals that have replaced human rights tribunals. So, um, like, but so there's things like that, and I'm just like, we have gotten to the point. I keep bringing up Man for All Seasons, and it's like that scene with Roper, and Roper's like talking about like I'd cut down all the laws in England to catch the devil, and Thomas More's like, well, what are you going to do when the devil turns around? So there are overcorrections happening. In Texas, they've gone too far. Certain things in Florida are going too far. That new bill now, um, when they're talking about not letting people discuss theory,
Mhm.
um, that could have a huge effect on the sciences. That could
Mhm.
have a huge effect on like string theory. Like, you can't prove string theory. It's all mathematical proofs that it's not
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
there's nothing there.
Mhm.
So, but when you spent 20 years now in the academy, or even I'd say since like the early 90s, pushing these ideologies that chip away at civil rights, and these
Mhm.
people have come back in and taken over administrations. Now
Mhm.
you've got I spoke to a guy in Montreal. He's a professor at McGill of chemistry. He was looking for he applied for a research grant. He was going to hire some PhDs, and because he was hiring by merit and skill, not by diversity, his grant was refused. And Pat's a South Asian,
Hmm.
so, and they're saying that he was being too racist, and he's upholding white supremacy, blah 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 blah. But it's like, okay, it's a chemistry research paper. You want people who know chemistry. It shouldn't matter. That's what he should be looking for. And so you like there's my thing at the academy. It's like you these whatever progressive woke, whatever you want to call them, these administrators and these departments have chipped away at what was our sense making and what was you know giving us the people that would go off and do like work for civil rights and work for like civil liberties and
Mhm.
our defense mechanism. Like, they've so corrupted our defense mechanism, we have nowhere to turn. And
Mhm.
and in some cases I'm like, okay, you know what, with some of the stuff Florida's doing, I agree with some of it. Some things that there are some overreach. Like, I agree with them taking away the bureaucratic DEI stuff,
Mhm.
but I don't want that to go into academic freedom. But at the same point, if you've got academic freedom, you have a responsibility. The universities have just they've not been responsible. They've let all kinds of insanity go on,
Mhm.
and at this point or other, someone's got to be held accountable. Something's got to give, because it can't keep going like this. So, like I said, maybe I'm being way too pessimistic. Maybe I'm just like 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 completely off the ball. And like I said, I'm an outsider looking in. So,
Yeah, man, that's what a great and also just depressing introduction to these topics. Depending on the mood I'm in, I'm sort of like you. I can be sort of black pilled. I think that's the word, where you just
yeah,
have the sense that it's hopeless and that we're done, and that so there are times when I look at the university system in America, in the US, and I just think, this thing is toast. I mean, it's self-destructing, and there's there's nothing internal to these organizations that is going to save them. They can't self-correct, for reasons we could discuss, but of which you are well aware, already. You don't need me to tell you. And then when you go look outside for correction, you end up with, as you said, overcorrection, right? Like, you end up with people like DeSantis, and you end up with some of the things that have been proposed in Texas. One proposal in Texas was for all future hires at state schools to just not have tenure. Like, it's just not even an option. There is no tenure track. Well, how are you going to get? I mean, the University of Texas at Austin, it's been, my information's out of date, 20 years out of date. But when I was there as an undergraduate 25 years ago, they had more Nobel laureates than anywhere else, any other institution. How are you going to attract people like that if you don't have tenure, right? Like, give me a break. It's just ludicrous. So you're just potentially destroying one of the world's greatest research institutions. Anyway, yeah. So there doesn't seem to be any way to correct from the inside. There doesn't seem to be any way to correct from the outside without destroying the institution. So that leaves me kind of despondent and thinking that it's all hopeless. However, I will say, I mean, that's just one of my moods. I don't think it's not useful for me to dwell there. Uh, I think we need to be optimistic, even just as a matter of sort of strategy or something. Because if we're just black pilled and catastrophizing and feeling hopeless about it, it's highly unlikely we're going to do anything to fix it. So I think just as a matter of, if we value these institutions, and if we want to fix them, we have to adopt an attitude of optimism. And I do see reasons to be optimistic. um, I do see, being within institutions, I see a great deal of faculty at this point, it's faculty resistance. I almost don't want to say resistance, but faculty are actually not as sort of insane and insanely woke as you might think. I actually have more faith in faculty. I'm just speaking generally, just across all institutions. Of course, there's some institutions where everyone's completely nuts, but I just think in general across institutions, faculty are actually more sane. Yes, they're super liberal, but whatever. They're sane. They value academic freedom. They, et cetera. They value free speech. That they, in other words, they've been socialized into the sort of value system of what we think of now as the older academy, the academy from back in the day. Really, I think most people, professors in the academy, have been socialized into that and believe in it. And I see the evidence every day at my own institution and other places. So what I'm getting at with this is right now, I think you have a sort of a silent majority, if you will, of faculty who are not down with destroying academic freedom. And I think they have yet to sort of stiffen their spines and stand up and resist this stuff. But I think it may be coming. And you see the occasional example of it, like Hamlin University in Minnesota, where they fired an art history professor who showed an image, a representation, a painting of the Prophet Muhammad, a beautiful 14th century painting of the Prophet Muhammad. She was fired for that because that was Islamophobic, because some of the Muslim students at that institution, they abided by the kind of Islam where you're not supposed to see any depiction of the prophet. The university president said sometimes, there's academic freedom and diversity are in conflict, and diversity trumps academic freedom. Well, the faculty rose up and voted. They sort of gave a vote of no confidence, saying that she should resign. This president should resign, right? I think things like that give me great hope, right? Faculty reasserting themselves and showing that they are not all just sort of hopeless, dopey wokesters who don't give a damn about academic freedom and don't see the value. So that's where I want to end up. I want us to take hope, feel hopeful, confront this with a sense of optimism and a sense that, you know what, it's not actually as bad as it may look. There's a huge group of people on the ground, grassroots, who are actually, I think, ready to rise up, ready to retake control of these institutions, and they just have to be activated. Something has to activate them, like it did at Hamline. And I see moments of this at my own institution. We can go into that, but that's where I want to leave it, with that sense of potential optimism, guarded optimism. Yeah.
Maybe I don't think the academy can be saved, or maybe some remnant of it can be saved, or some other format, but like things like University of Austin Online, like the one that Peter Boghossian's involved in, something like that. There was another one, I'm trying to remember the name. It was another online academy where they were pushing like these Enlightenment values, and it was classical education, and it was another university. I know Colin Wright did a couple of things with them. I can't remember what they were called.
Yeah, who was that? Oh gosh, what's the name of the place? There's also a place I think in South Carolina, maybe.
Yeah, like I'm trying to remember. Like I can't remember the name, but so there's little things like that, and I think maybe small liberal arts colleges could be the push that puts some of this stuff done. But at the same point, one of the things that I think needs to get done is, yeah, fine, you're going to talk about academic freedom with the president or whatever, but you have to then, like, the faculty has to come to the administration and say, you know what, we don't care if you have a chair in alchemy, but that chair in alchemy cannot, dictate how chemistry is done. In the same way, like all these DEI initiatives, whatever, I mean, I don't want to get into a whole argument about CRT or whatever. I think CRT is absolutely worthless. I think some of the stuff that Derek Bell did under like the critical legal scholarship, he brought up some good points, but I think CRT on it, it's like, and especially what it's devolved to now. Mm-hmm. So these are completely unfounded claims. If the university wants to give up PhDs in that garbage, and people like Kendi, I don't think Kendi deserves a PhD. I think that devalues your PhD by him having one. But whatever, let the university do that. But the university, the faculty has to say, you cannot use this stuff to set policy for the university because this stuff's not proven. There is
Mhm.
no you like. Sorry, I really wish that when Princeton had put out that letter, the president of Princeton had put out that letter about how they were racist, and the Trump admin said, "Okay, we're going to investigate you." I
That was
wish they
great.
had. I wish they had investigated them, because why are you saying you're a racist and you're a white supremacist? What are you basing this on? Let's
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
And that would have exposed all this nonsense. I mean, and I we need something like that. And I wish the faculty, okay, I work in IT, so I work with a lot of geeks, um, and like I always said it, it's just because the faculty's too bookish. Their academics are too bookish. They don't want to have the fight. They would just rather just sit and do their work. Which, okay,
Hmm.
fine. I respect a physicist sitting there and doing their work, or anyone, like, but you got to look out and see what is coming your way. And I don't think anyone was watching it until it came and it actually affected them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, a lot of the DEI impositions are coming from administrators, right? So sure, yeah, Kendi has a department and he has a PhD and he's teaching and giving, whatever people can, I don't know what it is, major or get a you know, MA, PhD in his field, whatever. But yeah, it's the administrators who have sort of whatever studied their Kendi and then are put in these bureaucratic positions of power, and then they have all sorts of ways that they insinuate themselves into hiring and they even into curriculum. I mean, at my school, they're creeping up on our curricular decisions. Um, so that's where I think really, I don't think it's so much that Kendi has a department. It's more that there's every institution now has this DEI bureaucracy with enormous powers, um, and yeah, and it's sort of it's this parallel force. There's faculty governance on the one hand. The faculty are supposed to make the decisions. Faculty set the curricula. Faculty do the hiring. These kinds of things, but on the other hand, you have this other sort of bureaucratic government that's becoming more powerful than the faculty. But the faculty still do typically have the power, should they so choose, to band together and to engage in collective action against that stuff. And again, I see examples of it at my school, and you see it elsewhere. And you just have to get them pissed off enough. Just like you said, you understand why a physicist would just want to say, "Leave me alone. I just need to do my work." What does it take to activate that person, right? What does it take to make them realize that this threat to one person is a threat to all, right? What does it make? And so it's when you finally sort of shake them out of their stupor and say, "Come on, can't you see what's happening?" And then they will say, "Whoa, you're right. Let's band together. Let's do something." Yeah, that's the challenge. It's a collective action challenge. I see it at my institution. There's a lot of people that I'm in contact with daily at my institution who are of exactly like mind to me. We're very concerned about the incursions that the DEI bureaucracy is making. I will say our DEI bureaucracy is explicitly against academic freedom. I mean, I have one of the top bureaucrats, he was recorded at a public event at our school, openly saying that he wanted to resist certain forms of like critical thinking about things like CRT on our campus. He explicitly said, "How do we resist having this come to campus?" And by this he meant any idea that someone ought to, think critically about CRT, DEI, this kind of thing. So anyway, the point is, you know, it's there's all these people who recognize this problem. They recognize it's a threat to academic freedom, but they haven't just yet been activated to do anything about it. And as far as I know, to be frank, like I'm the only person at my school, Occidental College, who's doing things like this, like going on a podcast and talking about it. Everyone else is like, "Look, I'm going to protect my little department, my little my colleagues. I'm going to protect myself, but I'm not ready to go out in public. I'm not ready to Uh, I'm not even ready to speak publicly about it in a faculty meeting yet. I just want to sit tight and hope it passes me by and that I can keep all my people safe and my department safe. But it's not going to work. That's not going to work.
No.
We're going to have to, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
okay, like don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's coming from the faculty. Yes, it's the administration, and it's but okay.
I mean, there's plenty of faculty who are
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah, who are woke and whatever. I get that,
and
but
there's like a little handful who really drive it, actually, like what I
mm,
see at my school. There's this
mm,
handful who just drive all the lunacy.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, but I'd be like, okay, like what I was saying, Kendi having a PhD. It's just
Yeah.
these things. I mean, the administration and the faculty or whatever. At some point, there's got to be some kind of checks or balances where yes, I realize that a chemistry professor is not going to be able to sit in on an art history PhD and figure out, is this person, you know, giving me the right information.
Mm-hmm.
But there's got to be an audit of what's being considered for PhDs. Because like when I read some of the near peer, like that account on Twitter, near peer review, like
Mm-hmm.
they just publish these like gender theory papers and race papers and whatever, and you just read these things and like people are getting their PhDs and their masters and they're getting higher level degrees from this nonsense.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think the faculty needs to be more active. It's like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
because okay, you're teaching at a university, or maybe you didn't go there or whatever, but that reflect if that university is putting out degrees in that kind of nonsense, it reflects on you. And it,
Yeah.
or your alma mater is giving out degrees and stuff like this, and it's just like, I mean, it's that's where I'm like, you're hurting yourselves, and that attitude that, and I've spoken to a couple other academics and like and professors and stuff, and they said that same attitude. But if you ask these guys about standing up to fascism, they'd give you that quote about first they came for the Jews and I didn't speak
Yeah.
out because I wasn't. I mean, like, but you're doing
Yeah.
the same thing here,
Yep.
like,
Yep. No, totally. Yeah, and it is complicated though, because so typically, I suppose, every institution is different, and whether it's public, private, whatever. But so how do you end up with all these grievance studies departments, right? Some of which are just total sort of lunacy, right? What was I think that Twitter account that you mentioned, wasn't that the account that exposed, let the world know about this guy who had written a paper where his paper was that all he was doing is reporting on himself masturbating. Was it to like child porn or something? I mean, it was
Oh,
unbelievable.
yeah, I think I
You know what
remember
I'm
that.
talking
Yeah,
about? Just
yeah, I think I remember that.
unbelievable,
Yeah.
unbelievable. Like this whole paper, it was just him recounting his experiences masturbating to some kind of disgusting porn. I can't remember whether it was, I guess child porn would be illegal, but it was some kind of really fringy, weird. Anyways, yeah, how the hell do you get to that place? Well, part of how it happens is, I think, precisely because how did he have a department in which to write that paper? How did he have a journal in which to publish that paper? How was there an institutional structure that would reward him for that? Right? Okay, here's how I think it happens. Uh, so faculty have an immense respect for one another's fields of expertise. I'm a classicist. I deal with ancient Greeks and Romans and the languages and the literature and the philosophy, the religion, the history, you name it. And insofar as I respect my own disciplinary expertise, I also accord that same respect to my colleagues in other fields. And I say, oh, you're a psychologist. You're the one who knows about psychology. I am not going to, dare tell you how to run your show, and I'm not going to tell you what's right and wrong in your field. That's your field, and I leave you alone. You leave me alone. We respect each other. We respect each other's expertise. Well, so what happens is then some people get together and propose a new department, and it's a department of grievance studies or whatever. And sure, the physicists say, well, this stuff seems a little goofy to me. I don't know, but you know what? I respect the expertise of my colleagues. And what am I going to tell them? You can't do that. Like, my expertise is atoms and, string theory and dark matter. I'm going to tell them how to run their gender studies thing. No. So what you do is you're polite and you're nice and you're respectful of the expertise of your colleagues, and you vote for them to be able to be allowed to create a department. And then voila, there's the department, right? And so you have this attitude of non-intervention and this good attitude that, I can't tell you your business, you don't tell me my business. And I think if we destroyed that, we'd be in trouble, right? We'd have everyone coming after everyone, right?
Yeah,
So that's where I think that's where it comes from. I think that's why we end up with the goofy departments,
yeah,
right?
but I mean, you're
So
getting that now. You're getting uh med students having to take DEI
yeah, yeah,
oaths. Okay, you're getting physics departments being told that they need to hire more brown and black people. You're getting chemistry research not funded because they're not being diverse. So you're having that happen already. And so
yeah,
my thing is there's got to be some common sense as well. So like let's say someone's got a PhD in urban planning and criminology, and they said, okay, well, I'm going to set up a course on how to deal with homelessness, and the
yeah,
whole course is about hiring uh, what you call it, mercenaries and killing all the homeless. Now, at some point or other, someone's
yeah,
going to have to say, "Well, wait a minute, that's nonsensical." Like, I don't
yeah,
care what your PhDs are in.
yeah,
Like, that's you're going like a bit too far. And granted, I'm taking it to an extreme here, but
no, no,
Ken,
of course, I
Kendi's
get it.
saying that the only
It
cure
makes it
for
clear.
yeah, but Kendi's saying like the only cure for past discrimination is present discrimination, and the only
Yeah.
cure for present discrimination is future discrimination. I mean, like that's a watered down version of Fanon and the Wretched of the Earth,
Hmm.
and that way leads to violence and it leads to division, and so someone's got to say, wait a minute, that's not right. Like someone's got
Hmm.
to be the voice of the adult in the room, and I don't care
Yeah,
if you're stepping on someone's toes, but
yeah,
it's something's got to be done at that point.
yeah. Well, okay, I'll just say a couple things about DEI and like, the putting, DEI litmus tests in medical school and, all this kind of thing. I mean, that's not coming directly out of some other department. It's not another academic unit it's not one academic unit interfering with another. Again, it's this bureaucracy, right? These this it's this separate sort of system within the university that's sort of forcing that. And then of course they always have people within a given medical school, within a given physics department, within a given bio department, who are gung-ho about it and happy to sort of, help the DEI bureaucracy insinuate itself. And so, yeah, again, so it's not like it's not colleagues messing with colleagues. It's these administrators messing with departments and how they're run.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's a
and the
different,
yeah, but
it's
the
a different kind
administrator,
of,
yeah, but like my thing is the administrators are educated in
yes,
those fields and
absolutely.
they're coming back
Absolutely.
in. So
Yeah.
it's yes, it's
Yeah.
coming from those fields. That's why I'm saying those fields have to be looked at. It's just,
Yeah. A lot of it's like education. Education is one of the wildest, looniest fields. A lot of the
uh,
administrators come out of education, and yeah,
uh, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, so that's my thing with that. Like that's when I was saying it's another department. It's yes, it's the
it's
it's
the
the
ideas that are being
yeah
drawn from, yeah,
yeah, it's it's the bureaucrats and the diversity, the administration and the diversity bureaucracy that are coming in and throwing this garbage out. But
yeah.
where they're being trained. Um,
Yeah, can I
anyway,
just a note on that, which is
yeah,
really some of the things that I found the most interesting at my
mm,
school, and I suspect you could find it at other schools, and it complicates that kind of simple narrative. And what it is that if you were, I'm not going to mention particular departments by name, but if at my school you found the sort of so-called grievance studies departments and you went around, because I have actually done this, I've
mhm,
talked to the people in those departments, and you went around and you said, do you like what the new DEI bureaucracy is doing? Do you like this initiative that the new DEI, whatever, president, vice president, whatever, is doing? What's amazing is that none of those departments that you think of as the likely suspects actually approve. In fact, from what I can see, it's those departments, the departments where they read Fanon, it's those departments that are actually the most unfriendly to the DEI people. Because here's my take on it. I have, well, a couple takes. One take is that they think the DEI people are doing an incredibly stupid, anti-intellectual sort of kindergarten version of the kind of stuff they teach. You see what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
these are professors who've written books and they've spoken all over the world at universities. And then you have some ding dong with a BA or whatever, BS in education, come in and do like the version of what you do, but light. And it's just sort of like, it makes it sound stupid. That's the thing. The people in these departments who teach, again, they're teaching CRT, they're teaching Fanon, but they're teaching it in complex ways. They're teaching you to think about it, be made uncomfortable by it, but then also see what its weak points are, et cetera, et cetera. They're doing it. These are my colleagues. I know how they're teaching. They're not doing sort of stupid indoctrination sessions. Some are, but not most. So they see the DEI guys as just like, oh my God, this is like sophomoric, just bullshit what you guys are doing. So it's a very complicated relationship, and they're some of the ones who resist some of the DEI stuff the most, and think that it's actually screwing up their program. Again, I can't say too much because I would be betraying things said in confidence,
Mm.
but they're upset that the DEI people are coming in with their sort of half-assed ideas, teaching them to students through whatever training sessions, whatever. And in a sense, like taking all the nuance and complexity out of the stuff that they think of themselves as teaching more in a much more, rich, nuanced, critical manner. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
And
they're
so in a
they're
sense, the physicists are like, whatever, I don't care. It's not my stuff. It's all stupid. Just keep it away from me. But these other people have like a stake in it. And they're like, these DEI guys are just children at this. So
Mm.
that
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
so it's
Well,
complicated. Very
okay. I
complicated.
mean, that makes me a little bit happier. Like, even if again, I don't care what you're teaching. I might disagree with you, whatever. But as long as you're not forcing that, and it's if you're not, and if they're opposed to this stuff, then fine, they're opposed to it. I'm glad to hear that. So, kind of switching, like, kind of going off that actually. Um,
Yeah.
I'd mentioned, or you'd mentioned that you were working with the Academic Freedom Alliance, and also that you're doing
Yeah.
work with Free Black Thought. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you want to talk about those two things, because I would like to talk about what's being done to push back on this, because it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
my take after looking into all of this. My take is it's a war of attrition until you fix the source. And if you don't fix academia, if you don't fix the colleges of education, K through 12 is screwed. If you don't fix academia, like I take the religious view of it. I say, it's K through 12 now are woke madrasas, and
Yep.
universities are the seminaries. And
Yeah.
that's the way I look at it. I'm like, you have to fix that before you can fix the ACLU, before you can fix the CDC, before you can fix organizations in Canada. If you're just keep pumping out the people who think this way, we're lost. So, like, I'd like to hear about the pushback. I'd like to hear about what's going on, because you don't hear much about that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I mean, I agree. Like, in general, if you zoom out, if you're from the view from whatever 10,000 feet is, I think it really is, as you say, that the colleges and universities by and large are the seminaries, right? And then they're turning the K through 12 schools into madrasas. I mean, just the other day, at my son's school, they came and taught him all about neo pronouns like Z, and taught him about what was the other thing he said, that they taught him these new words for like niece and nephew that are supposed to be gender neutral. One of them is like nibbling, and one of them is neffling, and you know. So, and he just thought it was just weird. He's just like, wow, that's weird, and he wanted to talk about it. But yeah, I mean, so and the school, what the hell? I don't think there's anyone at that school. I know the administrators at that school. They're not committed to this gender ideology. They're just like, well, I don't know. I mean, that's just what people are teaching these days. And so it just sort of gets in, even though no one actually is committed to it, right? I've talked to the head of my son's school about things like this. He's not committed to this stuff, but the way he sees it is like, well, I don't know. This is what everyone's doing. So what else are you going to do? So yeah, what do we do about this? I mean, I was trying to sound these notes of optimism and trying to hint at the complexity of it a minute ago, but we do have to do something, right? And what do we do? Well, I don't know. I mean, so I'm not excited about the DeSantis model, to say the least. I don't mind him. I have to say, I don't mind him getting rid of the DEI bureaucracy in the public schools there. I think that's a ingrown kind of bureaucracy that that is mainly interested in its own self-preservation and self-perpetuation, right? It's like a kudzu vine,
Yeah.
you know, that just is going to keep growing and keep growing and keep growing. I have to say, I don't mind him doing that. I worry about his threats to academic freedom. My current approach is democratic and internal. I'm trying to talk to as many colleagues as I can and get them to join me in pushing back, not having a like staging a revolution or having a war, but just pushing back every single time some new thing is proposed that cuts into academic freedom or that introduces some element of ideological indoctrination. And the DEI bureaucracy at my school is going in that direction. They want to do more and more sort of indoctrination. So again, what I'm trying to do is organize people to just at the grassroots level push back every time they push forward. I kind of think that may be what it takes to save these institutions is people just getting organized and collectively acting against this stuff just gently over time. It's going to be slow. It's not going to be sexy. It's not going to be sudden. There's not going to be like a big moment where everything goes boom. It's just going to be this slow process of saying, no, no, you don't. Sorry, not, nope, that's your limit right there. Currently is the best answer I've got. That's the best answer I've got. But it's democratic. It involves collective action. It involves consensus, and it does not involve destroying institutions. You know, there's the Chesterton's fence thing, right?
Yeah.
Don't destroy something until you know why it was built. I fear that if we do things like eliminate tenure, eliminate the ability, as you mentioned very early on, to even teach theory, right? We don't know what the ramifications of that'll end up being, right? So that's why I think we have to do it in this much less, what's the word, dramatic way, much less, what's not catastrophic, but yeah, subtler kind of way, where we just use the powers we do have as faculty already. Push back. Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, there's one thing that I'll kind of mention because I've spoken to a lot of parents. I've spoken to people from like parents defending education, stuff like that. So this is all K through 12.
Yeah.
Now, if there was work between academics and some of these parents, because what some of them are saying is we want to take over, we want to start running for school board. We want to start running for the administration. And once we get into the administration and the school boards, we want to then go to the colleges of education and say, we are not going to accept teachers who think like this.
Yeah.
And so I mean, if there's a coordination between academics and these parents, and the parents are coming in from the school, the K through 12 side of it, you're coming from academics, you're pushing internally, and the parents are putting external pressure on the university saying we don't want this. So if no one wants what the university is producing, maybe just they can talk about getting rid of capitalism, whatever, blah blah blah, all they want. But if they're going to lose their cash flow, they're going to change and they're going to give the people the product that they want. So I'm just wondering, like, if there needs to be some sort of coordination between those two, like working with parents groups to push that thing of we don't want our teachers. We don't want teachers who are going to make our kids activists. We want teachers who are going to teach our kids to read and write and do math.
Yeah, that is a really I think I like that a lot. I have a couple things to say on this kind of topic. I think another place that you can actually leverage that is not just parents sending their kids off to college or putting pressure on parents, putting pressure on college and saying we don't like the sorts of teachers you're turning out, right? That's one thing. But I actually think students can put a lot of pressure. And one of the things that I'm finding at my school is that the students are they're quite fed up with the general atmosphere at the school, and they know that there's something sick about it and wrong with it, but they don't have any conceptual resources. They don't have the words to say what it is, because they feel like, well, if I say I kind of don't like the way the culture is here, well, then what is it? What am I, like a racist? You know what I mean? I've had students actually say, I had an Asian student tell me, really just am not comfortable with this whole microaggressions idea and the way it's pushed. But then when I say that, I feel like I'm kind of being right wing. And so, you know, I assured this student, no, you're not being right wing. There's nothing right wing about thinking microaggressions are bullshit. In
Okay.
fact, some of the best, criticisms of microaggressions have come from the left. So if an idea is bullshit, it's neither right nor left. It's just wrong or
Mm.
bad or it's good or
Yeah.
true, right? So don't feel bad about pushing back. So, okay. I think students can push back in addition to parents and say, look, I don't want this kind of education. I don't want this constant atmosphere of talking about the evils of white supremacy and capitalism and how oppressed we are as minorities. Just this semester, I've talked to students, trans, gay, black, Asian, all of whom have been it's not a bunch of white conservative kids that have been coming to me. It's students from so-called marginalized groups who've been coming to me and saying, this stuff, the way they're telling us that we're so oppressed, the way that there's this constant atmosphere of crisis that we're supposed to feel, that as an Asian student, as a trans student, as a gay student, as a black student, I'm like being traumatized and crushed and oppressed. I don't like this. I'm not comfortable with it. It sucks. So if the students start saying back to the college, no, this is not working for us. We want a traditional liberal arts education. That can be a great source of pressure too. Can I just say one thing then
Mhm.
about um, you mentioned like parents defending education and what
Mhm.
you can do in K through 12 schools, right? There's probably a lot of successful stories coming out of that, I would imagine, right? Parents running for school board and
Yeah, it depends on where you are.
yeah,
Like I mean, I follow some of it, so I can't tell you about all, but like I know in certain parts in Texas, all the quote unquote non-woke parents that ran for school board and things like that, they won.
yeah,
There was some in, like I said, Canada's much further along this road. Um, they had some recently in Ontario, and that was kind of 50-50. But I mean, the smearing of some of the people who were, non-woke or whatever, like the smear tactics on those people was, it was just unbelievable. I mean, we had national newspapers just calling them far right and white supremacists
oh,
and stuff, and it's just like,
yeah,
no, they don't want you know CRT based curriculum in K through 12,
yeah,
which I don't want that either. I mean,
yeah,
some of those books, like there was that one book, Not My Idea,
yeah.
and that was being
Okay,
taught to kindergartners. I mean, come on, like
that's
whiteness
right.
is like you're selling your soul for with your contract with whiteness. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it had it's by Anastasia Higginbotham, I think it's the
I
name.
don't know. It's just
Yeah,
it's
that's right. No, and there was a picture of the devil, and the devil is whiteness, and the devil is asking you to sign a contract. And if you sign the contract with the devil, which is whiteness, it says things like you will make the lives of people of color miserable and all
yeah.
this. It's really toxic. I mean, it's a really toxic way to attempt to sort of, in a sense, re-racialize white kids.
Yeah.
So it's to think. I think the idea is this: what they think is that white kids are racialized. They are sort of taught what it means to be white, and what they're taught is that it means you're superior, you're better, you're the best. And I think what they're trying to do is sort of de-racialize and re-racialize. They're trying to say, kids, white kids, you've been taught that being white is superior. We're here to tell you, no, it's not. It's actually oppressive and it's bad. That in itself is deeply toxic, right? Like
Oh,
you don't,
it's awful. I
you,
mean, okay,
yeah, you don't want to teach white kids that they're superior because they're white. But the cure is not to say that you're inherently oppressive. You're
yeah,
inherently privileged. It's the medicine is as bad as the disease.
yeah. But
Yeah,
I mean, the APA put out a couple of studies. I think it was in 2022 or maybe in 2021, but white kids are getting a racial identity faster than, like, it's growing at a faster rate than any other race or population group or whatever. I mean, among like black and Hispanic and Asian, the racial identity was already there, but among
Mhm.
white kids, it's growing at a faster rate. But I
So
mean,
meaning like a sort of a real sort of conscious awareness of just like by being white
white,
and like
yeah,
sort of embracing it in some way.
yeah. But I mean, like, okay, again, I keep bringing this one thing up, which is the Dalton Academy, and
Yeah.
they, I mean, you saw what happened. They took
Yeah.
kids for 45 minutes a week, separated them by race, and told them either they were oppressed or oppressor. And these kids, and after like within a couple of months, started looking up what's good about my race, what's bad about the other
Yeah.
races, and they
Yeah.
turned into a bunch of ethno nationalists. I mean, like,
Exactly.
it's like my thing with this is not
Yep.
a healthy way to raise kids,
No.
whether you're telling them that they're oppressed or that they're the oppressor. And I'm not saying it's going to affect every single kid, but not every single kid that goes through a madrasa joins ISIS, but you get
Yeah.
enough of them that are they won't go out and kill the Charlie Hebdo cartoonists, but they're agreeing with the people who did. So
Yeah.
that's where you get. I mean, you get the conservative Muslim who will denounce ISIS, but will deny ISIS has anything to do with Islam, and that's what you get with this. And then you will get a larger percentage that are going to join extremist groups, be it Antifa or the Proud Boys. Right? It's just
Yeah.
you're setting up a smorgasbord for extremists of any stripe to come and like get recruits. And I'm like, that's my thing with this is I don't have kids. I don't have the only dog I have in this fight is I want my doctors and my engineers and whatever be well trained. Like,
Yeah.
when I'm an old fart and I need to go see my doctor, I want him to know what he's doing, not that he's the same color skin as I
Right. Right.
am.
Yeah. And yeah. 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 Okay. So much here to dive into. I mean, so um, I 100% agree everything you just said. Let me pick up on a couple of things. It's not just that they're sort of trying to re-racialize white kids to see their whiteness as oppressive. It's also that they're trying to really double down on and get black kids and kids who are not white to see their identity, to see the content of their racial identity as oppressed, right? This is just to amplify something you said. And the reason I worry about this is that, well, my wife is black and, my kids are therefore, in America, we have, of course, this incoherent sort of race ideology. So my kids are either black or they're mixed, whatever that means, which that implies that there's actually such a thing as pure white and pure black, and somehow they're a mix of the two. Whatever. I'm going to let them sort out their own race in that way. But my kids are they're not so susceptible to the white people or oppressors narrative, although who knows what they'll start to think about their dad. What I worry about for them is well-meaning teachers, most of whom, by the way, will be white, telling them that they are oppressed and that they can't get ahead in life and that there are systems in place to hold them back. My kids are brilliant. They're in the top percentiles in reading and math. They come from a well-to-do home of 2 PhDs. They're in a private school. They're going to do great in life. They're not oppressed. No one's holding them back. The only systems in their lives are systems that are propelling them forward. I cannot even imagine how toxic it could be for their minds to learn that because of their blackness or their mixed identity, that they are, somehow crushed under the boot heel of oppression. Just keep that shit away from my
Yeah.
kids, right? Um, but let me just say this: just we're weaving all these different strands together. But here's one way in which I took matters in hand with the school that my kids go to. At the beginning of the school year, I requested a meeting with the head of the school. I went right to the top. I said, bring whoever else you want to bring, whatever other the highest officers. And I sat them down and I walked them through about an hour and a half of slides showing them the kinds of things that are being taught in some schools, right? I showed them slides saying that if you're a black woman, you have no power and no agency in this society, and you will always, do badly. And, you know, I just walked them through the slides and I talked about them. I had 6 different points I talked about. I showed them some Dalton school stuff. And they were blown away. And I said, listen, what I said was, don't you dare do this to my kids, because my kids their mother is African American. I do not want any teacher at this school telling my little girl that because she's a black woman, she's oppressed. She'll never get ahead. She'll never earn any money. She's gonna, blah 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 blah. Right? Don't do that to my little girl. My little girl is an incredibly empowered little girl, and I don't need you to strip that from her. And they listened and they were blown away. And again, it's the same strategy I have in my school. I think it's individuals sometimes banding together, going in and just dealing with it one on one, face to face, instance by instance. And does that make sense? And
No, that makes perfect sense. And I mean, I get it. It's just some of the things, like I said, I don't want to be too pessimistic or too down, like something like that. What you're doing, like I'm happy that there are schools out there that are willing to listen to the parents, but
yeah, they were willing to listen.
Yeah, but I mean, you saw it with what's her when she was running for Supreme Court, when she was being looked at for Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Okay, she adopted black kids,
right?
And there was that whole thing coming from the progressive side about how, biracial families, there is a thing of oppression and oppressor and oppressed, and it's always going to be there, blah, blah, blah. I mean, so you've got the opposition to interracial marriages coming from the far right and the far left now, which is whatever. I mean, that's crazy enough. But again, it's the effect on the kids. Like I had a friend of mine his wife's Asian, so he's white, so his kids are, mixed race, whatever you want to call it. And they came home from school one day. He wrote a Medium article about it, about how his kids were telling him that they wish they weren't part white.
Wow.
And, that's whether it's they don't want to be part white or they don't want to be part Asian or, part white, part black or whatever. Like that's not a healthy way to raise kids. And it's like I said, I just, I'm glad there's things that are being pushed back. I'm glad there's things that, like I did, mentioned free black thought. Like I'm glad there's something like free black thought. Like I've spoken to Eric, and what they're trying to do is they're not pushing any agenda. They're saying, okay, there's a lot of different voices in the black community. It's not all just Al Sharpton and Ibram Kendi. There's a whole diverse way of thinking, and that's what I think the school should teach is, it doesn't matter what, like you can read Frederick Douglass or you can read Derek Bell. There's a huge gap between the two of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I mean, that's as that's the whole reason we formed Free Black Thought, was simply, as you pointed out, not to push a particular political agenda, but merely to say, to push back against the hegemonic voice, which is always telling you, like, this is how black people think. It's Ta-Nehisi Coates and it's Ibram Kendi and it's Nicole Hannah-Jones, and that's the narrative, and that's what you're supposed to think, and that's what you're supposed to teach your kids. And yeah, we wanted to just push back and say, no, actually, there's that's a tiny subset of well, maybe not tiny, but it's one subset of black thought, and there's many other angles and perspectives, and we want to foreground those and bring them to people's attention as a public service, as a kind of educational service. And yeah, absolutely. And so we, specifically speaking of K through 12, one of our ambitions, and the only thing holding us back, is all of us work full time. We have families. We just don't have time to do this shit. What we want to do is we want to create curricular sort of modules and that teachers in K through 12 can use to show the diversity of black thought on various topics. So right now, if you're a teacher of eighth grade, say, and you're sort of doing your maybe African American studies unit or something like that, teaching American history, perhaps, what's going to be available to you to teach is going to be very one-sided. It's increasingly the sort of Nicole Hannah-Jones 1619 Project vision of American history, of black life, of opinions and views of black people. We wanted to create the sort of alternative spectrums, everything from the conservative to the sort of more moderate, and also the voices of people like Adolph Reed, who are Marxists, but who find the sort of woke stuff completely ridiculous and absurd, right? We want to actually build that up as a something to be incorporated into K through 12 curricula to give a fuller sense of the richness and diversity of Black thought. Yeah, that's one of our ambitions. So if there's anyone out there listening who wants to donate, like we just need to hire, we need to hire some help um,
Yeah, I mean,
get this thing off the ground. But yeah,
well,
yeah,
I mean, I'll I'll put all the links and everything in the bottom, but
yeah,
we can speak about this like after we're done, or speak about it later. But Counterweight might be someone
yeah.
to reach out to because I know they were doing a lot of putting out information and like little curriculum type things, and they were
Uh,
looking something at that as well. So that might be a good thing to look at. But like I said, we can speak about that after.
that's it.
Look, I don't want to keep you too much longer, and
No, no, no. I'm
it's
happy to keep chatting. Yeah.
but
You
I
know
was
who
just
else?
gonna go ahead.
Like, can I mention one other thing folks ought to look at is 1776 Unites.
Yeah,
Bob Woodson's, you know,
yeah.
the
Bob
Woodson Center.
Woodson, Ian Rowe. I think John McWhorter might have something to do with it. I can't remember.
Yeah, they're on the
Yeah,
board. Lynn Lowry's on the board.
yeah,
But they put out a K through 12 curriculum package. You know, it's not like a full curriculum
mm,
that teaches you everything, but what it does is they teach you stories of sort of black people in American history from, you know, the earliest times up to the whatever 20th century, who excelled, who did amazing things, who made discoveries, who invented things, whatever, who fought against slavery and Jim Crow. And so it's a kind of affirmative vision as opposed to the sort of dark, you know,
yeah,
negative, pessimistic vision that you get in like the 1619 project kind of approach to things. So that's another resource. But yeah, but it's not about viewpoint diversity. It's just about sort of telling the happy side of the story. Yeah.
but didn't they put out the book was Red, White, and Black or something like
Yeah.
that? Yeah, yeah. They had a book about that, about stories of different African Americans, and like I mean, or I think Ian Rowe, because I saw him talking about it. He did his whole thing on the Rosenwald schools, and
Yeah.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
These very successful schools from, I think, what was it, like early 20th century,
yeah,
right? Or even
yeah.
turn of the century
Uh,
in DC, if I'm not mistaken,
well,
right?
there was a few in the South. I'm
Okay.
not sure exactly where they were, but then after Brown versus Board of Education, they were all shut down because they were black schools, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. But look, like I said, I'm gonna let you go. If you want to let people know where they can get a hold of you, I'll put all the links to like Free Black Thought and the Academic Freeman Alliance, and
Yeah.
put a link
No.
to where people can get a reach of you. So let people know where they can get a hold of you. And it was great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a fantastic conversation. I feel like we only just barely,
Oh
in a
God,
sense, scratched the surface of all these things. Um, but Yeah, so definitely, I think the best one easy way to find me is to go to the freeblackthought.com or .org website. I think either one will take you there. And there's an about page, and I'm on there. And folks can also email me at my college email address, which is jmackey, that's Mackey at oxy.edu. I'm happy to, correspond with folks, especially if people are looking for guides as to like how to deal with their school district, or also academics who want to talk about sort of strategies that they can use on their own campus. I've actually had success on my campus. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I did manage to organize my fellow faculty, and we were able to push back a bias response team. They were going to have a bias response team where students could report faculty to the bias response team, and we got that shut down, that part of it shut down. So faculty, parents, you name it, anyone who wants to reach out and discuss, how to constructively and not destructively push back against the sort of hyper wokeness, reach out. I'm happy to talk.
well, that's great. Well, like I said, I'll put all that in the bottom. And thank you very much again for coming on. And thanks everyone
My
for listening.
pleasure.